Winter weather in Northeast Ohio changes day to day and year to year. How much snow? How cold will it get? The 19 First Alert Winter Weather Forecast starts now.
Snow, cold, ice, wind. Oh, the joys of living in northern Ohio in the winter. But the question we always get is, how bad will the winter be? Well, that's why we're here. Hey there, I'm 19 First Alert Chief Meteorologist Jason Nicholas. And over the next half an hour, the 19 First Alert Weather Team will tackle that question. For more than 20 years, the 19 First Alert Weather Team has been certified as the most accurate in Cleveland, and winter weather forecasting can be the toughest thing we do. But it's something we take very seriously to keep you and your family safe. So let's get started. There are only a few places in the world, only a handful of places that experience lake effect snow, with the Great Lakes being one of those lucky places. So, of course, we went to Cleveland's lake effect expert, meteorologist Jeff Tanchak, for more on how Lake Erie will impact our winter weather.
First Alert meteorologist Jeff Tanchak. Let's talk lake effect. Oh, we love lake effect here, don't we? To put it simply, if you've been a longtime resident of Northeast Ohio, you know you get the colder air over the relatively warmer waters of the Great Lakes, and the warmer the lake water relative to how cold the air mass is, the heavier the lake effect snow typically. So there you go. This is the setup here. In the the fall, or like early fall, we typically get rain, okay, but eventually it's going to be snow. So there you go. The warmer lake, the colder air moves over. That air lifts higher terrain. You get that additional lift. It's not along the immediate lakeshore. Yeah, you get lake effect along the immediate lakeshore, but you tend to see your heaviest lake effect snows in the higher terrain, several miles inland. This is a perfect example of the lake effect snow. Last year, remember this, Saybrook, November 28th to December 3rd, where you got over 60 inches of lake effect snow here with a west steering wind. Lake County, northern Ashtabula County, there was a big difference even in Ashtabula County, north to south here. Cleveland, hardly anything, few flakes. We had green grass, and that was the setup, that west wind here. And sometimes that west wind will even shift. This is a southwest wind component. Wind direction is key when you're forecasting lake effect. You also have, moisture and disturbances, but typically with a southwest wind, you tend to see your heavier lake effect snow between Erie, Pennsylvania and Buffalo. The Lake Michigan connection is there as well. You have to watch what happens off of the other lakes, and then also the Lake Huron connection with a north wind, and that tends to favor more secondary snow belt action here. So it's the shifting of the winds that'll shift the lake effect around. A lot of the times we'll get a northwest wind. It's what we call a multi-band situation. Those skinny lake effect squalls where you can run into a squall and then the sun will come out. That's what you often will see with a northwest steering wind. So keep in mind your big lake effect events, like the one that happened the weekend after Thanksgiving of last year, typically will happen the first half of the winter. What I mean by that, or the first half of the, maybe late fall, early winter here, second half of November, first half of December is when we often see that. History will show that La Nina winters tend to lead to more frequency of lake effect snow. So we'll see what happens this year.
Hey there, everyone. Meteorologist Kelly Dobeck here, and I want to talk about winter storm tracks and patterns, specifically when we have a La Nina pattern. So what is La Nina? So we get these strong winds, these trade winds off the coast of Africa, and sometimes they're stronger than normal. And what that does is bring much cooler ocean water temps to the Pacific, and that creates a more northerly storm track. So what that does is set up us here in Ohio, Northeast Ohio, and the Ohio Valley for a little bit more of a wet setup. Now, depending on where where the storm track is coming from will be dependent on if we see more rain or snow. But typically in a La Nina pattern, we get a lot more storm tracks out of the Rockies and out of the Northwest. You can see the jet stream, that blue arrow there. That's the typical track that storms take, is coming more so from the north. It keeps things a little bit more dry and warm farther south. So let's talk about those potential winter storm tracks. We'll pull up the big map here again. Especially during a La Nina year, we get a lot of those storm tracks coming from the northwest, Alberta Clippers from Canada as well. But we have 3 typical storm tracks when we're talking big, large scale snows. This isn't lake effect. We call it synoptic level or more large scale. So Alberta Clippers, northwest storm systems, we could potentially see more of those during a La Nina year. Colorado lows can also bring more snow to the area. Gulf lows, though, interesting enough, typically bring the most moisture to our area because they can pick up all of that moisture from the Gulf and funnel it here to northeast Ohio. Now, it just depends on what temperatures we're seeing that time if we're going to see more rain or more snow. And again, this is large scale and doesn't include the lake effect snow we see each and every winter.
Meteorologist Sam Roberts here with you for our anticipated temperature forecast for the upcoming winter season. So we'll dive right into some headlines. I do think we're going to get these shots of colder air coming over the Great Lakes as our jet stream dips down to the south. And of course, when you get those bursts of colder air over warmer than average lake waters, especially early in the season, you can get that uptick in lake effect snow. I also think we'll see a few more ups and downs than we had last winter. Last winter, remember, it was just persistent cold, and we had this persistent snowpack because temperatures wouldn't warm up. They just stayed cold. Temperatures this winter, I think we're going to be right around average overall, if not slightly below average. So what is average anyway? You think about our winters, you know, with the exception of last winter, recent winters going back to the winter before last and like the 8 before that, they were all like way above average for the most part. So for this winter, I do think a little bit cooler than that. An average December here, normal temperature, not the normal high, but the normal temperature over the course of the month of December would be around 34 degrees. I think we'll be around 35 this upcoming December. In terms of January temperature, so normal, what's considered normal for January, it's about 29.1 degrees. I think we're going to be down around 29 degrees. So pretty standard fare for this time of the year. And February already looking ahead way to the end of meteorological winter. The average temperature around 31.1, and I think we average out about 30 degrees. So looking at a pretty typical Cleveland winter here across northeast Ohio. Stay warm.
Still ahead, does it feel like winters here in Northeast Ohio aren't like they used to be? We're breaking down the numbers to find out. Plus, you'll hear us use the term wintry mix. So what's the difference between sleet, ice, and graupel? Everything you need to know straight ahead.
All weather, all the time. Stream First Alert Weather now on 19 News Plus. From Cleveland's most accurate weather team, this is the 19 First Alert Winter Weather Forecast.
I'm meteorologist Erica Page. Let's talk about this. We talked about it a little bit last winter, but I think it serves us well. It's this thing called recency bias. And so, yes, a lot of that is recalling what our memory has us recalling over the last couple of years, especially when it comes to trends. Let's talk specifically in terms of the winter weather. I have so many folks come up to me, and when we're talking about winter weather and winter forecasting and things like that, they say the winters, they're just not as cold as they used to be, and we don't have nearly as much snow as we used to, or the lake's not completely frozen over like it used to get when I was a kid. Is there some truth to that? Let's dive into some of the numbers. What I'm going to do is I'm basically going to look from the winter of 2014 to 2015 onward. You'll notice when we're talking about temperatures, and this is just specifically for December, January, as well as February, a lot of these winters have given us well above average temperatures. You'll see that with all these red boxes that I have here. Only one winter was within that half a degree average point that we should statistically basically be at for Cleveland here for a typical winter season. So yes, you can get some variability It's bound to happen. You're going to have some cooler years and some warmer years, but the trend has been that we've had more warmer years than, say, some of the cooler ones. So how does that then translate when you're talking about some of the snowfall aspects of things? Because that's also another really big topic. Well, seasonally, Cleveland should pick up about 63.8 inches, and most of that falls between December as well as March. So we're going to expand our data set here just a little bit more to see how the seasonal snowfall has turned out essentially over the last 10 to about 11 years. What you're going to notice is that we've only had 1 year, the winter of 2014 to 2015, in this subset of data where that snowfall has been anywhere close to where we should be in terms of a seasonal average. And as of late, well below average. The last 3 winter seasons for us have not produced a ton in the way of snowfall. Now, sometimes that correlates to some ice coverage and some of the cooler temperatures that we can get, but this is going to have a lot more variability with it because you can have some shorter bursts of really cold air moving over Lake Erie that really tend to spike up that ice coverage, which we typically see peak right around February 13th or so. So how is that recency bias been as of late? Well, we have seen warmer than average temperatures become a bit more of a trend, as well as less snowfall. It's not to say that it can't happen. Polar vortex type setups can certainly give us that cooler air that we need to get some of those higher snowfall totals. But again, it's all been what's the trend as of late, and that's really what we've started to notice in the data over the last 10 years or so.
Okay, you hear us say the phrase all the time, a wintry mix, and sometimes that's not only hard to forecast, it's also really tricky to be out in. So let's break down different types of wintry mix. Obviously, the first one is rain. Rain's pretty easy. We've got snow at the higher levels of the atmosphere, cold air, and then we encounter warm air. So all that snow will melt and we turn into rain. What about freezing rain? This is the one that gives us a lot of problems because while it starts as snow, we get a layer of warm air there. The snow melts, turns into rain, but then we have a little area down near the ground of sub-freezing temperatures. And that means that rain will then transition to ice as it hits the ground. It freezes on contact. So freezing rain's one of those weather phenomena that we never like to see at all because that falls as rain and then we see it freeze right on contact, and that can be very difficult for walking and of course for driving. Okay, what about sleet? Sleet is something we can deal with here in northern Ohio too when we talk about a wintry mix, and that's when you have that cold air falling as snow, you have a little layer of warm air so that melts, turns into rain, and then we have a larger area of that freezing cold air, and then we transition from rain back to sleet or ice pellets. So those will fall and they'll basically fall as little pieces of ice. And of course, the final one is snow, which is kind of easier than the middle two here. Snow is when the entire column is cold enough to support that snow as it falls to the ground. So when you hear us say wintry mix, we're talking typically about one of these 4 things. Each of those has its own challenge in forecasting and of course in navigating throughout the roads of Northeast Ohio.
I'm meteorologist Andy Chillian here to talk about some of the worst blizzards in Cleveland history. Before I get to that, though, we need to define a blizzard. So there's certain criteria for it, for what makes a blizzard. First of all, you have to have snow, large amounts of snow or blowing snow, although there's no exact number with that. Now, winds need to be sustained at least 35 miles per hour or higher, and visibility needs to be less than a quarter mile. And you have to have all these conditions that last at least 3 hours, and then you have a blizzard. So let's go all the way back to 1913, November 9th through 11th. This was also known as the Great Lakes Hurricane of 1913. The pressure dropped to 28.78 inches or 975 millibars, 50-mile-per-hour winds for over 12 hours. The highest winds were 80 miles per hour. So now you know why it was called the Great Lakes Hurricane. That's like a Category 1 hurricane, and imagine all that was snow. The total snow was just under a couple feet here, 22.2 inches. All right, now also in November 1950, November 23rd to 29th, this was known as the Thanksgiving blizzard, the Great Appalachian Storm of 1950. We had our infamous Snow Bowl when Ohio State was playing Michigan. I won't mention the final score, but let's just say it was a low-scoring game. Total snow in Cleveland also a little under a couple feet of snow there. This storm cost $1 million. Unfortunately, 23 people lost their lives in this storm. Okay, January 26th to 27th, 1978. The lowest pressure, 28.28 or 958 millibars. There was a 30-degree drop in temperatures in just 2 hours. We had sustained winds 50 miles per hour and higher. The maximum gust was 82 miles per hour at Hopkins, and the total snow here, not a lot, only 7.5 inches, but still qualified as a blizzard, and over 100,000 homes lost their power in this. And by the way, I want to go back to that pressure I just mentioned. This still today is the lowest pressure ever recorded in Ohio. So now you know some of the worst blizzards in Cleveland history. We'll see what happens this year, but these ones certainly are stacking up there.
It's the big question everyone wants answered. How much snow is Cleveland's most accurate weather team expecting this winter? Chief Meteorologist Jason Nicholas is up next with that answer.
First Alert traffic and weather together all morning long. Stream 19 News this morning on 19 News Plus. From Cleveland's most accurate weather team, this is the 19 First Alert Winter Weather Forecast.
Okay, it is time for the big reveal. How much snow are we expecting this winter? Well, when we really look into how much snow we get, a lot of global weather patterns come into play, a lot of different things that the weather team analyzes. One of those we do every year, the presence of La Nina or El Nino. In this case, we have a weak La Nina, which is cooler than normal ocean temperature out towards the equator in the Pacific Ocean. So hard to believe that that actually can impact what kind of weather we get here. When we look back at La Ninas, what does it mean? Ohio Valley storm track, that is very important to point out. That means the storm track is beneficial for potentially rain and snow. A wetter Great Lakes, warmer air, drier air stays to the south. And as I mentioned, it is a weak La Nina. So while we do factor it into our decision, we're not necessarily basing the entire forecast on that. But this is generally what we're thinking. Warmer and drier south, wetter across much of the Great Lakes, the big-time cold air to our north and west. So really it comes down to, yeah, the moisture will be there, but will there be enough colder air? And also we'll look back at past La Nina years, 2007 and 2010. Those winters brought us a lot of snowfall. You can see here 76 and 69 inches. So those were very snowy winters if you look back at other La Nina years. But remember, this year expected to be a weaker La Nina as we move through the winter. So what are we looking at as far as our snowfall forecast? Well, here we go. We're filling up the weather office with snow, which I think will happen. Last year, another year of below average snow, only 31 inches. That's like the 10th straight year we've had below normal snowfall. Hard to believe. Normally we're at 64. This year I do expect more snowfall than last year, going 45 to 55 inches of snow. So still below average, but higher than normal. And remember, this is just at Hopkins Airport. When you factor in our lake effect counties, obviously these numbers will be a lot higher than that due to the warm water of Lake Erie. Jeff talked about lake effect earlier, but our overall prediction for this winter, 45 to 55 inches. So you'll need the snow blower, you'll need the shovel from time to time. The big question is, will there be enough cold air? We know the moisture will be there. There's your snowfall forecast for this winter.
Watch 19 News this morning. Streaming weekdays 4:30 to 9:30 on 19 News Plus. From Cleveland's most accurate weather team, this is the 19 First Alert Winter Weather Forecast.
And that'll do it. Our winter weather forecast for 2025-26. We hope you've enjoyed it and even learned a little bit. And don't forget to download our 19 First Alert weather app. It's like having all of us in the palm of your hand. I'm 19 First Alert Chief Meteorologist Jason Nicholas. Stay safe and stay warm this winter.